harmonizing with nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Schmitt.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Beverly Schmitt Show, where being the best you has just gotten easier. Oh my gosh, my special guest today is Miss Unstoppable Tracy from Toronto, Canada. And I'm going to tell you, you guys are in for one heck of a treat today. We are going to find out all the amazing things that has made Tracy totally unstoppable. So there's no excuse. After you listen to what she has to say, there's no more excuses for why you can't do something. I mean, this woman is amazing. She's been on talk shows all over the place. She's climbed the Himalayan mountains, for heaven's sakes, right? She's going to tell us how and why she did that, and all about some of the other challenges that she's had, that she's overcome, where her true story about being unstoppable, and why it's even more fascinating because of who she is and what she is and why she is and makes her so much more passionate about the world in her unstoppability. That's going to put you guys all, I'm not going to use that word, that's going to be impressive, inspiring, and transformational. So Tracy, tell us what this was. Why were you driven to climb the Himalayan mountains, for heaven's sakes? That's a long way up there, and it's cold up there.
And it is cold up there. You think it's like lovely and warm. Just to say, Beverly, I'm so humbled and honored to be on your fabulous show with all your magical listeners. And you know, you were so kind to say unstoppable Tracy and what makes her unstoppable. And I throw it back and say that we are all unstoppable, and that the Nepal journey and the whole life's journey and our conversation today is all about unstoppable you, all our unstoppable listeners, and that we're unstoppable together. Nepal was many years ago in the 90s, and I was the first person ever without hands and legs to climb the Himalayan mountains. And I think I still am the only 4-way amputee to climb the Himalayan Annapurna region of the mountains. But we have a few fellas out there that have climbed some other magical mountains.
Right.
And it was what's so great when you jump into things is when you learn one thing, it snowballs. So I was a sailor, and my sailing instructor was going to Nepal. And I thought,
oh, okay,
which is so great. And so she invited me along, and I thought, well, why not? It sounds magical. And most of my life, being born a 4-way amputee, that people are sort of like, well, you can't do that, or that's not realistic, or there's naysayers, where here's this sailing instructor and she's saying, hey, come to Nepal. So I was like, okay, let's go for it.
Yeah.
And I remember, getting there, and I had my prosthetic legs on in Kathmandu, and we took a very rickety, bumpity bus over to the Pokhara, where we started our Annapurna trek. And I wasn't able to do the climb with my legs on. And It turns out what worked best was that I took my legs right off and just climbed on my knees, climbed on my stumps. And so I left my legs in Kathmandu.
Yeah, everybody should leave their legs in Kathmandu, right?
Legs in Kathmandu. That's the hard. You people talk about the pain in their legs when they're climbing.
And just cut them off and leave them behind.
Yeah, I really feel for you guys with those excess appendages. It was terrible. So I left them behind. And news hit the mountain. Villages from all over, many Nepalese locals who normally avoid like the tourists and the trekkers.
Sure.
Everybody heard about this woman with no arms and no legs trekking through. And I got to this suspension bridge one day, and I was on my half of the suspension bridge. And of course, every step for me is like 7 steps. for one of yours, right? With my little tiny. And so I would leave really early in the morning at dawn before everybody was even waking up so that I could get a head start. And then the group would catch up to me midday, and then they would pass me, and they would be at the next base camp long before I was. And I would roll in right as the sun was setting at the end of the day, wherever they were.
Right.
And so it was around midday when the group had all gathered together, and they were sitting at this suspension bridge area. And so they got up, and we all decided to cross this suspension bridge. And this suspension bridge was 840 feet above the Modi Kola River.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was like a surreal drop. There were planks, and it was windy. There were planks missing in the bridge, so you could see through. And of course, with your not your big feet, I don't know if your feet are big, but what I mean is with your long legs.
I'm probably about as short as you are. I'm like,
yeah, there you go.
Just a hair short of 5 foot. I have my feet, I wear size 5 shoe, right? So,
5 shoes. But so a 5 foot friend who can almost empathize that when those long leggers, they step over a missing plank, it's nothing. But even at 5 feet, when you step over a plank, it's just the width of a wood plank.
Right.
But for me, with just my knees, and I'm just shuffling, it's a step, right? It's a significant step over.
Exactly.
And when you're on a suspension bridge, there are ropes.
Yes, I've been on a few.
And
they swing.
Right? Yes. And many of the listeners, if you're listening, write in the comments if you've been on a suspension bridge.
Exactly.
And what you remember. Were there lines? Was it swinging? So what you realize is that those lines, I'm putting my hands above the head because that's where they were for me. But for most people, not a 5 footer, but a few people a little taller than you, the lines are usually around your waist area, right?
Exactly.
And so for me, with no legs, the
lines were clear. Yeah, and you can
and
she has no hands to hang on to these lines. Whoa! But she's unstoppable.
Yes.
Yes.
So I do have all of you wonderful listeners who are allies and friends in the world, and I have a spatula, a resistance device I call Trevor because it's a lot friendlier than spatula.
There you go.
And so my spatula, my Trevor, can help me hold the lines, but the trick is it was over my head. So when I looked left and right, there was nothing around me.
Just the big hole to fall through.
Just the big hole to fall through. And it's swinging on this bridge. So by the time I got across this magical, beautiful bridge, completely scary, but also gorgeous, my group, they had all decided to sit down again and take another rest. Well, my heart was going, boom, 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 boom,
I'm
boom,
sure
right?
it was. Mine's going like that. I can envision this. I have very good vision, right? So I'm seeing her out there on this swinging bridge. I can't reach this, and that's a long ways down. Okay, Spirit, get me over there, right?
Yeah. So I get to the other side, and with the adrenaline pumping, I decide to keep walking ahead.
Okay.
And a Nepalese student comes along with me. Her name was Susma. So Susma and I are walking along, and we see this great, big, massive hay bale, a huge hay bale.
Okay.
And sticking out from underneath it are 2 tiny, spindly little legs. And it kind of looks like a human SpongeBob SquarePants, right? There's this big yellow block and these little legs.
Okay.
And it's waddling towards us, and I'm waddling towards it. And all of a sudden, the hay bale starts to rotate.
Oh, no.
And I'm right at it now, and I feel like this hay bale is going to land on top of me. But it doesn't. The hay bale gets put down and kind of bounces on the ground beside me. And it reveals this elderly, frail Nepalese farmer of a man in tattered clothes. And he turns to the Nepalese student with me, beside me, and says, if this one looks like that, meaning no arms and no legs,
right,
what does the rest of the group look like? Right? And you're laughing and I'm laughing, and I thought it was funny. but it's kind of a little bit inappropriate, right? But it's hilarious.
It is hilarious.
And one of the Nepalese porters, like a lot of the group that I happen to travel with, they got Nepalese Sherpas. Sherpa is the name of a village, and so they often
Right.
we think of Sherpa as carriers, but that's actually just a description of a living area that happen to often work as Sherpas in the Himalayan mountains because of where they live. And so some of the people in the group had Sherpas carrying their packs and stuff like that. And one of them heard what the Nepalese farmer said. And so he responded to his question. He said, if one of them looks like that, what does the rest of the group look like? And my guy from my team that had been traveling with me for 9 days, he said, one of them doesn't have a head.
Oh, no!
And
I can imagine what's going through his mind at that point.
Yeah. And it's so great. So, when I was in Nepal, there wasn't enough food. And so the way they feed people is the most valuable contributor. So say the dad that goes and harvests the rice paddies on the field,
right,
he gets the most food because he's bringing home the most food. And it goes down the line. And so people with disabilities, I didn't see very many at all because they die off, because they're not valuable contributors in their eyes. They don't have the legislation. They don't have the awareness.
Right.
They don't have the technology like my fancy artificial legs. So it's not so much a bad thing. It's just a different thing in Nepal because they don't have enough food to go around. And that's the same with their animals. They feed one donkey and they cover it with bells and whistles and a colorful saddle. And then the other 19 donkeys, they give very little to, and they're very hungry, but they're drawn to and attracted to the bells and whistles of the one fed donkey.
Right.
So, in a country where stereotypes are not stereotypes, right? There are not people with disabilities working. They're not awareness. There isn't the awareness to understand, how appropriate or inappropriate something like that might be.
Exactly.
But this Nepalese Sherpa, the man who came from this Nepalese Sherpa, he was with me for 9 days. And if he could come from a place where it's realistic that things are different, if he could come from a place just by being together, better together, just by being together, where he could be brought to a place where he could make a joke like that after 9 days.
Right.
I realized that moment and today that there's a place for each and every single one of us, whether we're black or white, whether we're tall or 5 foot,
Exactly.
or whether we're lesbian, bi, gay, trans, queer, plus, whether we're spiritual like yourself, or we're learning how to tap into those spiritual readings and intuitive gut, whatever stage we are on our journey, there's a place for each and every one of us,
Yes.
whether the world knows it or not. When you jump in, like I did with Nepal, that man adapted, and that was way more extreme than adapting here in Canada.
Exactly. Because it was so far removed, so much out of the norm, right? And again, you tapped on something really key here. It's not about what the exterior is or what someone else is thinking. It's about where we are on our journey and this inner of who we are and what makes us each unstoppable. And this is one of the reasons why I named the show Being That Best You That You Can Be. So every step along your journey, right, is becoming that better you. So when you look at that journey that you took to the Himalayas and all these little adventures and everything that transpired, how many lives that you altered just by being you and being better each time. Yeah, you had to start out earlier. Yeah, you had to overcome a lot of challenges that the others didn't even have a clue would even be there. And yet have someone who could look at you in the condition that you are, say physically, right? But not use that as a detriment and conquered your challenges and kept on going. the inspiration and how it changed, obviously, his mindset. So the next time when he saw one that might be physically challenged, shall we say, right? To say, wait a minute, I just spent 9 days with this person, had no arms, no hands, no legs, no feet, right? And look what she did, right? So
Well, to joke about it with poverty, unbelievable.
yeah, and again, it's that perception, that transpires. But we
And
all,
sometimes it's the perception of others,
yes,
as they perceive what Tracy can do. And sometimes our worst perceivers are our internal dialogue of what
oh
we
my
think
gosh,
or not.
that is so key, because we can be our own best friend or our own worst enemy, right? So everybody out there that's listening, do you see what has made Tracy unstoppable? Do you get where she's coming from? You think you got a problem? What are you making excuses about? What's holding you back from
And
doing all
can I
these
just
things
sort
that
of
you want to do?
and there are some authentic stories out there.
Oh,
Like
sure.
I can't begin to know what's behind your listeners' eyes. I don't know. Like we know that phone calls to abuse are up 400%.
Oh,
We
right.
know the suicide is up, and these are things that are happening. I don't know when this airs, but with the COVID environment, on top of just even everyday society. So can I just say that, you have a very realistic reason, and no one would judge me if I said,
Right.
I'm not sure about Nepal or working or getting married or having children or, busting Uber into Canada. You want me to do that? And I did. Or helping a pilot strike. You want me to do that? And I did. Or you want me to sail against 27 able bodied, Viking like men, all with arms, all with legs, all with super Arnold Schwarzenegger muscles, all of them,
Right.
and kick their butt. And I did. Right. So there's complete understanding. We have a realistic reason, and I don't know what's going on, what you're facing, what horrific health concerns or family needs or financial needs or community needs. And if I could just share with you that because I live a life of no excuses,
Mm-hmm.
I get to live a life of no limits.
Right.
So, Beverly's given you some tough love, but no excuses, no limits.
That's right.
And I say I was lucky to be born limitless.
Yeah.
And I spell
I
limitless
like
with
that.
a B.
I
And so
like that.
that's the secret, right? I was born this way, born limitless. I was born limitless. But I have a bigger secret for you, that all of you listeners and Beverly extraordinarily so, like you are limitless too. It's not just that I'm limitless, but
Right.
you were born limitless too. We are all limitless. So Beverly's really tapping on the nose there.
Yeah.
With her tough love, no excuses.
Sometimes
But
I
let
can
me
do that.
say,
Yeah. And again,
but it's with love.
it is.
No
It
excuses,
is with
no
love.
limits.
It is with love, because again, it's part of that identity, knowing you, really knowing who you are and what those struggles are. It's not discrediting that they're not in existence. But
No.
again, you have a choice. You can live with them or you can live without them, right?
Yes.
It's the 6 inches up here that gives you the opportunity to make the choice to do this or to do this,
Yeah.
right? And we all have those choices, and again, it's going to be too hard and I can't do it. It's like, okay, why are you using these words, right?
Yes.
And start to really look at what this is. Why do you think you have to be the victim? Why do
Yes.
you have to be the martyr? When my journey started, I had lost my identity, and it happened over several years. Totally lost my identity. And I was on the edge of suicide because I was not living my dreams. I was not doing what I wanted to do. All these things had been busted. I had no identity, but it's by association. It's like, okay, this isn't me. And I had so much anger. Oh my gosh, so much anger and hate in me, and
Yeah.
not a way to express it. And this was back in the 70s. It was in 1974 when I started my journey. And I decided I was going to go figure out a way that I was going to say, I'm done, right? Well, I had 3 kids. They were all under the age of 5, right? And it's like, okay, but there was no one to talk to back then. There was none of this stuff. I grew up in the Midwest. I'm a farm girl, right? I'm second oldest of 11 kids. I got my story too. But the thing is when I started to really put it out there, I had to reach that end to be able to come out and get back in that little space of whatever it was, to be able to be here to do what I'm doing now. And my kids were my driving force, but to be able to be that expression and get all that anger out and have my aha moments, and it's like, oh my gosh, right? And it's about knowing yourself, and getting my identity back was key, right? And that's why, just with my name, well, let's just use that, right? At first I didn't like to be called Beverly, because I could hear my mom whenever she got angry, or
Like
whenever she wanted,
Beverly.
it was like Beverly, and then it was like Beverly Ann, and it was like, oh my gosh, that was my cue to stop, right? And so I would hear that, but that was one of the things I had to get over, and when you understand, how you cut a name down, so it was cut down to Bev, right? That cut me into a part of a person. It took away my full identity. I did that to myself, right? So reclaiming my identity as Beverly started part of that processing. When people would refer to me as being so-and-so's mom or this or that, I'd say, no, my name's Beverly, right? And they'd look at you like really strange. But again, it's like, I have to have an identity. Because if I don't have an identity, what good is my purpose? What is my purpose, right? And it all came about, and my life changed. I mean, it just kept changing and changing. It's every day, what do you do to become that better you, right? What do you do to become that unstoppable you? Because it's there. Get out of your head and start speaking your thoughts. And when you start speaking your thoughts, you're going to have the best laugh of your life, right?
And I can share with you a little about supporting your journey on the limitless secret of unstoppable you.
Let's go for it.
Yeah, and sort of what you're describing is like that earning the independence phase, right? When you feel like you know you, and gathering your soul. And when I was in Nepal and I was hanging off those cliffs, right? And you're on these belay lines, and you look left and you look right, and there's nobody around, right? And you talked about being on the edge of your journey with even considering suicide, not doing what you could do, and you've got 3 kids, and there's you, yourself, and yourself.
That's right. Like me, myself, and I.
Around. Yeah. And so it's kind of like when I was on that cliff, there was nobody left of me, nobody right of me, and I felt completely alone, and I kind of froze in that moment.
Literally, it was cold out there, but that's okay.
Yeah. Daytime was warm. It would get cold as soon as the sun would go. It would get very cold. But on track with the story is I'm hanging there, and I'm having this moment of fear, and I'm holding the lifeline. Trevor here is helping me hold the lifeline, and I'm hanging there, no arms and no legs, and I'm like taking in all the beauty, but petrified.
Right.
And all of a sudden, somebody shouts, "Tracy, are you on the ground?" And in that moment, at first, I was kind of like, no, right? I was petrified. Like my lifeline shouting, am I on the ground? And I'm not. I'm hanging midair. And then I had a second wave of, I'm doing it.
Right.
I realized that I was the one, me and Trevor here, was suspending myself. But I wasn't doing it alone. There was somebody on my lifeline. There was somebody on my belay line. And, when we are on this journey of earning independence and finding our true self and our soul and our strength and reframing those 6 inches between our head, as Beverly says, we're not alone. We have Beverly, right? That's we have her show as a lifeline to reinvigorate your soul, and you go out there and you launch independently, but Beverly's a lifeline. Unstoppable Tracy's a lifeline.
That's right.
And the people and the others commenting and write down who your lifelines are. Is it your partner? Is it your neighbor? Is it a sister? And if there isn't somebody you can think of, you've got Beverly.
That's right.
So there is lifelines out there while we're reframing those 6 inches, even when we feel completely alone, like I did hanging off that cliff.
Right.
is establish who's your lifeline. And so I like to say the limitless secret is to exceed uncertainty, embrace possibility, and earn independence. So earning
Wow.
independence is establishing that lifeline.
And that is so true. That is so, so true. That is so impactful. Those words, take them to the bank.
Yeah.
Listen to that, guys. When this is done, rewind, write that down, put it in your face, put it up on a mirror. That is valuable information that she just gave you. Because, again, we talk about lifeline. So, when you are by yourself, you came into this world alone, you're going to go out alone, right? But you still have you, yourself, and I, right? There's the three parts of you: your higher consciousness, your conscious, your subconscious, however you want to put it, right? They're still there. So you always have the ability to call upon the power of who you are. And in the most inopportune times is when you find the lifeline to yourself never fails you, never leaves you, right? So learn how to call upon who she is or who he is, and you will never be alone. So when you can learn to be comfortable with yourself, it doesn't matter what the world is out there. You will always conquer everything because you always have yourself with you, right?
Yes. And that does come with uncertainty. It is scary. You know, I didn't dive 100 feet deep. I'm a master certified scuba diver. I didn't dive 100 feet deep without being scared, or I didn't climb the Himalayas without being scared, or I didn't jump out of the airplane without being scared, or I didn't fly the airplane without being scared, right? And I didn't go to the first day of kindergarten with all the able-bodied kids without
Right.
being scared, or I didn't go to the school dance and wonder if any of the boys are going to ask me to dance. My gender preference is male, without being scared. And so courage is in spite of the fear, right? Courage isn't without fear. And so to exceed uncertainty, it is to do it believing.
In spite of, right?
Yeah, in spite of.
Right.
I've lost my line. I normally say along that, you know, exceed uncertainty, feeling, that's it. Feeling uncertain is no excuse for inaction. It's okay to feel uncertain.
Say that again. Say that
But
again.
feeling uncertain
Yes.
is no excuse for inaction, right? Exceed
Yes.
uncertainty. Feeling uncertain is no excuse for inaction. And I can share with you, you know, a very specific example, like in sailing, because I don't have my legs.
Yeah, you left him over there in Timbuktu or whatever you
left
said.
Left him in Kathmandu.
Yeah, Kathmandu, that place.
No, I did that as a teenager. But sailing, I started as an 11-year-old girl, and there was no programs for children with disabilities in Canada. And this woman in Nepal, when she was a teenager, when we're 10 years apart. So when I was 8, she was 18. And she came in and she said, I would like your list of children with disabilities. I want to start a sailing club. There's none in Canada. And they said, we're sorry, because of privacy, we can't share this list. But I happened to be sitting in the waiting room waiting for some new legs when she walked in, and I said, I want to. So like I jumped at it, right?
Yeah.
What happened that whole summer was when I would be in the boat, because I'm top heavy with no legs, right? I swim without my legs on. So I couldn't be in the boat with the legs on. That every time there was a wave or some wind, the boat would heel and I would fall out of the boat. And, you know, the whole summer that happened. And they can't pass you if you can't stay in the boat.
I didn't know that, but that's good to know. But that would make sense, right?
It would make sense. So all of my able-bodied friends, they all got their white sail level 1. And I failed. But I knew I could sail. Like I knew the points of sail. I knew the parts of the boat.
Right.
When I was in the boat, I could sail. I just couldn't stay in the boat.
I just couldn't stay with my boat, right?
I couldn't stay with my boat.
It's a little hard to sail without the boat, right?
Crucial skill, apparently.
Apparently.
Right? So I wanted to go back the next summer, and there was these thoughts. My mom and the sailing instructors, like, here's this girl with red hair. My hair was redder when I was younger, and I had these pigtails and freckles and glasses. At 30, I got laser surgery, so I don't have glasses anymore. So I have the whole thing: no arms, no legs, no eyesight, pigtails, freckles, and I'm falling in the middle of Lake Ontario where there's a ferry that's going back and forth. So it's almost dangerous. But I know how to swim, and I'm wearing a life jacket, and all the other kids fall out of the boat too. So long as you can swim and you're wearing a life jacket, you need to take these safe risks, right? It was safe. I had a sailing instructor, I had an emergency boat, I had a life jacket, and I knew how to swim. So it's a very safe risk, even though it sounds scary falling out of a boat.
Right.
Well, I just kept climbing back in the boat, and I loved swimming and I loved sailing. So I went back the next summer, and I finally learned how to balance in the boat. And I learned, if I'm not in my head, can I do it? I'm going to fall. And in my boat, where's the line? What's going to happen inside my boat? When I look ahead outside of my boat on what's going on around me, I could see the wind on the water. The water where the wind is darker. The patches on the water are darker.
Oh, really? That's good to know.
That's kind of neat, right?
Yeah.
So I learned, okay, there's a windy patch coming. Brace myself.
There you go.
Right? And so I learned to balance in the boat. And because I learned to read the wind and balance in the boat, it turns out that was an advanced study skill. That was a bronze 4 skill. So I got my bronze 4, and then I got my white sail level 3, 2, 1, right?
Well, so you know what? It doesn't matter where you start. It just matters that you start.
Get there. And so all of you that are listening that might feel like you're struggling or might not feel like you know yourself the way Beverly is passionately saying, earn that independent self and be comfortable with self alone. You are probably just doing the advanced study backwards.
Sometimes I like the way you say that, because that is so true. Where you're doing all of this stuff, and now you're going backwards on how did you get to there. You didn't know it, but you knew you know it. It's just like growing up on a farm. We never had a clock. We're out in the fields, and all the time, and it was you learned how to read the sun. So you can still read the time of day even when it's in the middle of the night, because you have that sense of where that sun is located energetically wise to know. I mean, I still tell time today just by feeling where the sun is, even if I can't see it.
Yeah, and I can get girl in your soul.
Yeah, I guess so, and it just becomes a part of that. A part of knowing. You don't know what you know, but what are you going to do with what you know? And that's creating that change, putting that into action. And sometimes we know things, we don't know how we know it, but we follow it and go with it, right?
Yeah, feel that intuition.
Yeah.
So there's signs. Sometimes when we're self-absorbed and in that self-pity party that you talked about, well, when we get out, when we look out, we see the clues. We see where the sun is for the time. We see the wind is for not falling out of the boat. Or when you look ahead, or you look at how others are feeling. I was all concerned because my mom woke up today with a sniffle, and it's during COVID. And then I got a text message from a friend whose mother is probably going to die this week from cancer. And it's sort of like sometimes we need to look outside ourselves, and we need to look out and around ourselves to contextualize and to see, there are clues of strength. There are clues. And so when you're feeling uncertain and scared and just beyond overwhelmed, feeling uncertain, feeling overwhelmed,
and let yourself feel it,
and let yourself feel it, but it's still feeling uncertain is no excuse for inaction.
That's exactly right. Yes.
You earn independence by who are your lifelines. You're not alone. You don't earn independence alone.
No.
And you exceed uncertainty because feeling uncertain is no excuse for inaction. And I believed I could sail even though I was uncertain, falling out of the boat. And you jump in until you figure it out. And the only difference between people that are living happy marriages or having strong relationships with their children, or are billionaires, or have a billion people that they volunteered for and made a difference in their lives for, or our movie stars or our superstar basketball players. The only
Right.
difference between success and failure is one more try. It's one more try. Successful people are really good at failure. They're really good
Oh
at,
gosh,
okay, let's
yes.
do it again,
Do it again.
right?
Yeah, look at Einstein, right? We wouldn't have these lights inside our houses if he would have stopped 1,001 times. He didn't stop. He was
Yeah.
unstoppable. You know, you said something, you made a statement here when you were in the boat and you learned how to read the water and the wind. And again, that's part of becoming aware of what your environment is because it has messages. So here's the hidden message that little Miss Unstoppable Tracy discovered at her young age was, well, see that darkness over there. Now again, incorporate this into your day-to-day living, right?
Yeah.
Where do you see the darkness that you need to brace so that you can pass through it instead of let it knock you out of the boat, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So become aware of that environment. What is the message, right? And how are you going to brace yourself to plow right through it and not turn your world upside down?
Yeah.
Right?
Not avoid failure.
No,
Exceeding
that's the
uncertainty.
lesson. That's what's going to make you. That's going to make you stronger. It's going to make
Yeah.
you more unstoppable when you understand they're not mistakes.
No.
They're things of wisdom to move you being that better you all the time, all the time, all the time. Makes you a better you. It makes you totally unstoppable. It makes you that independent.
And you know, Beverly has shared that she's had a significant life journey, and you're guessing that I've had a significant life journey being born a four-way amputee. And I feel very lucky to have been born a four-way amputee, because that embracing the possible, seeing the possible despite failure, comes from having lived through adversity. We have that confidence having lived through it. You know, when I worked at Air Canada, there was the pilot strike, and then there was the layoffs, and that was at United Airlines and Lufthansa Airlines in Germany and all around the world. There was that time when the economy airline market broke the original model, and all the big players were now going bankrupt, like United, like
I
Air
remember
Canada,
that.
like Lufthansa.
Yes.
And so what happened in Canada was that our smaller Canadian Airlines and our smaller Air Canada, the government, the feds, required a merger, and they made Canadian Airlines merge with Air Canada, acquired Canadian Airlines. Well, Canadian Airlines, they had been through a Ward Air merger and a Pacific Air merger, and they had been through a dozen mergers. And so they had lived through breakthrough, merger, here we go again, over
Right.
and over and over again. So when Canadian Airlines staff merged with Air Canada, they were kind of like, we're sad for the old. We liked being Canadian Airlines, but what do we got to do now to get to that place of comfort again and efficiency again with Air Canada? But the Air Canada people, they had had many, many years. Their grandparents had worked at Air Canada. Their fathers had worked at Air Canada. Their significant others, they met their loved ones that they ended up marrying, worked at Air Canada. Their children were now working at Canada, and they really enmeshed. And so their best friends worked at Air Canada because they worked shift schedules, so they don't really know their neighbors because they're working crazy hours. And so they had been 30 years or more, a lot of these Air Canada employees, and never had a change. And then they get this Canadian Airlines merger forced on them, affecting their seniority as well.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And they really resisted. And I think, you know, I feel so lucky to have been born a four-way amputee, because I learned, you know, at 2.5 years old, I'm just a kid that wants the cookie from the cookie jar, right? And somebody assumed that because I had no legs and no hands, that I couldn't get that cookie. But I'm just a regular kid that wants a cookie. I'm no hero. I was born this way. I didn't choose to be born this way. I'm no hero. I'm just the kid that wants a cookie. So I had to figure out how I was going to get the cookie from the cookie jar, because they thought it was safe from me. Right. And I just laid down and I rolled over And then I have one arm, missing a hand, but I have one arm, and I shimmied my shelf up until I could steal the cookie from the cookie jar. So at 2.5 years old, I learned, do whatever it takes to get what you want.
Yeah.
And I'm so lucky that every day disrupts the norm for me. Every day I got to figure out how to open a door, and nobody's around in my home. I got to figure out how to do things now with the isolation, because people aren't coming into the home to maybe make a cup of tea. I got to pour my own cup of tea. So I figured out how to weight balance on the counter so that I can pivot pour the tea instead of have to pick up the hot boiling water. And I pour it into the sink, because you got to be sure that I'm 90% of the time spilling that boiling water, but I'm spilling it into the teapot that's sitting in the sink. So there's like a backsplash.
Right.
So I'm really lucky to be born a 4-way amputee, because I've had the bonus of learning, embrace that possibility. So
it's created a resourcefulness that a lot of us lack, right? Again, you
don't lack it. You just haven't tapped into it.
You haven't tapped into it, right? And so, for you listeners out there, listen to what she's saying here. This is really important. You've heard me talk on different shows about being resourceful. About really tapping into the creativity that you have, right? Because we take so many things for granted. Here's a woman over here that had nothing to go up against, or to even think about, because here she is, this child, thinking, cookie, how do I get it, right? And so she doesn't have the options of pushing the chair over and climbing up, but she's got to figure out how she can get to where she needs to go. That's resourcefulness. Watch a child when they're starting out. There's no fear. They know what they want. They're going to get stubborn. They're going to get it. I was such a rebel from an early age, right? And I think it was all my rebelness and instigating and everything else that I did throughout my life, right, that put me in that space where I had to really lose 100% of my identity to come back to be where I needed to go, because I needed to get past that rebel, that action of always having to be, I'll prove it to you type of thing,
Oh, so such an prove it girl.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You're like, why'd you do the Himalayas? Well, just because somebody said I couldn't. I was such a rebel. I was a teenager. It was just a rebellious thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, watch me. You think I can watch me? It's like,
yeah. You're telling me no, Mom. I'm 18. I can go, right?
Do whatever I want. Yeah. It's crazy, but you have that drive. And again, you mentioned something about that fear, right? And we all have it. It's learning how to take that fear and use it as your driving force to conquer, not your driving force to destroy you. It's a charge. You have a positive and a negative charge. It's not a right or wrong. It's not a good or bad. All you have is your is. What's your is?
Yep.
Now you're going to take this positive charge and you're going to take this negative charge. You're going to make them work side by side. Right? So you take that powerful negative charge of fear. Oh my gosh, that will drive you to the highest peaks of the Himalayas or wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
When you learn how to put it in the order of how to drive what with it, drive it in the direction you want to go. You're the driver of your life. Doesn't matter what your physical vessel looks like. It all depends on what your mindset is. And when you say I'm unstoppable,
right? You're unstoppable. Yeah, a little 2.5-year-old girl wanting a cookie. There was no baggage between my 6 inches. I just believed you could do it.
And we need to take that.
Sometimes those solutions come up in funny places. Like,
they do.
You embrace believing you can do it even when you're failing. You are unstoppable
because you're moving
that possibility.
And you're moving action. You're taking action. Change and action is going to happen, whether you go with it or not.
From a couch at home.
No,
right? It's not going to. You have sometimes you have to jump in, even though you don't know how yet. Like we didn't know how I would ski. We didn't know how, but we weren't going to figure it out on a couch at home. We weren't going to figure out how does a 4-way amputee ski on Google, right? There was no searching that.
Right.
You have to drive your car, as Beverly's saying, and get out in action. And I got out in action to a ski hill And who's my lifelines? I was with some skiing instructors. I wasn't alone. I exceeded uncertainty. Okay, feeling uncertain. I'm going to do this, even though I don't know how.
That's right.
Embrace the possibility, even if you don't know how. And we were sitting on a bench in the ski place. And, the sit ski, for people that are paralyzed from the waist down or missing their legs, they usually have
Right.
2 arms and hands. So they can hold crutches with skis on called outriggers. But because I don't have hands, I wasn't able to hold and control the outriggers, and
Okay.
wiped out a bunch of times. And so I'm
Yeah.
sitting on this bench and my legs are off because the sit ski was best with legs off. And beside me, my ski instructor sitting, like my magical Beverly is beside me right now as an instructor on her show. And so my ski instructor sitting right beside me, and he's got gigantic feet, Beverly. He doesn't have your
He
tiny
didn't even
size
need
5
skis. You're saying his feet were skis?
Yeah, his feet were skis. He had like size 11 huge
Oh,
feet.
wow. Yeah.
And that's not even big for some. Some people have 12 and 13 and 14 feet. But
I know.
my little brain, my young mind was thinking, he's got huge feet.
And you're
And it was
close.
a-
You're close to the ground, so you're seeing him, right?
I'm looking at his feet. And then I realized he's got huge feet. My thighs, my stumps could fit in his ski boots. They're so
Well, there
big.
you go.
So we put my legs, my stumps, my thighs in men's ski boots. But I wouldn't have figured that out without starting to drive the action, right? I had to,
That's
even
right.
though I didn't know how I would ski, I had to get out there and just get started.
Yeah, you've got to be in the midst of it to figure
start
out
to
where
see
you're going to go and what you're going to do. So like you said, to sit back there on that couch and try to figure out something and keep on figuring and make it this and make it that. Unless you
Jump
it.
in. Yeah.
It-
Now
it
I'm saying
can't
jump out of that airplane. Just make
Yeah.
sure you know who packed your parachute.
Yeah, and just make sure you know where the ripcord is, right?
Yes, right? And so you jump, you definitely jump, but you earn your independence, get your lifelines like a Beverly, you exceed uncertainty. Just because you're feeling uncertain is not your gut saying no.
No.
You don't avoid failure. And so we tried the forwards boots, but because the boots were angled, right, for skis and a duck
Oh yeah,
shot,
because they tilt forward, right? Yes.
and you put your knees forward. Well, with no knees, my whole body was tilted forward, and I kept face planting again.
It's like falling out the boat. Instead of falling out the boat, you were sliding down the hill face
Down
forward.
that hill into the- No. So then what we did is we put men's ski boots backwards.
Okay. I
Because
knew you
I
were
had
going to say
no
that.
toes.
Yeah.
No toes, right? It didn't
Yes, it
matter.
didn't
which way the
matter.
boots were, right? But we're so used to doing things the same way. Everybody does everything. Everybody else
That's
wears
right. That's
We
right.
need to think of it. So we need to boycott the norm and disrupt the norm and see what other ways. The same way doesn't make it the right way.
That's exactly right.
And so we
Yeah.
put the boots backwards. And of course, I'm knees to skis. And when I get on the chairlift, because I have no knees, my skis are perpendicular to the ground. They're not parallel, right?
Exactly.
So I'm going to get off
Oh,
the
no.
chairlift, and don't the back tips of my skis hit the snow mound before I'm ready and slingshot me
Ooh.
off of that chairlift. And it slingshotted me past the beginner green run.
Oh
It
no.
slingshotted me past the medium difficulty run.
Oh no, you were on the black ones?
And it slingshotted me all the way to the double black diamond.
Oh my gosh.
And so my ski instructor, he says to me, whatever you do, make sure you turn. Because it was all lined with trees on the left and the right side of it. It's a run in Newfoundland called Oh Me Jesus.
Oh, and there's probably a reason because of that, right? Because them
Yes,
trees, they make us stop really kind of hard.
Full stop. Yeah. And there's the pitch and the moguls and the ice.
Oh yeah, I've been on them black skis. Yeah. Oh my
And
gosh.
I want you to know, I believe in God, and I'm not being blasphemous. That's the actual name of the run, and in fact, it's actually quite honoring, because whoever you believe in, the universe, Allah, for me, God, whoever it is for
Right.
you, you are praying to your spiritual significant other on that run. That's what the
Darn
OMJ,
straight. Yeah.
right? And so it's very honoring. So I tell you, I wiped out in the trees 12 times
Oh.
before my ski instructor said, maybe we should go in for the day, right? But I'm this, the limitless secret, and failure one more time is success. And I didn't want to quit. And so he was so great about going at it and going at it and going at it with me.
Uh-huh.
And I tried on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. But after that, oh me Jesus day, a Monday of 13 wipeouts, Tuesday to Thursday, we also tried green runs and we also tried blue runs. And, often as entrepreneurs or as parents or as leaders or as volunteers, we want to go in with the whole award-winning shebang,
Right.
brilliance. And children too, right? They don't want to learn to ride a bike. They just want the bike to work.
Yes.
And all of those bits and pieces. And so we went back to green runs and beginning runs and medium runs.
You have a tendency to go backwards on things here, but that's okay, right?
But backwards boots, backwards sailing levels. And I grew up and I got a bronze medal in downhill skiing. I learned how to turn. And I on top, and then I went on to be the provincial committee board member, and then I went on to be the national committee board member, and then I went on to get this bronze medal and part of the International Paralympic Committee supporting games in Canada, like the Pan Am, Pan Am Games. And on Tuesday, I'm speaking with Invictus Games. I don't know if it's going to be Tuesday when this show airs, but
right.
you watch the replay. Who's a general who was in Afghanistan in charge of 40,000 men, and now he's the CEO for the Invictus Games 2020, Mart. And from there, from the athlete life, I got exposed to sailing life, and from the sailing life, I ended up sailing against able-bodied Viking-like men. Right. So and why? Because who I surround myself with is to try to dial it up. If I sailed against other Toronto female disabled sailors, I wouldn't be stretching myself.
Exactly.
So if I want to be a gold Olympian, I have to surround myself with gold Olympians. And gold Olympians are all men. So I ended up, trying to get myself to a place where I was surrounded by, and it took me, I had to sleep in my car for 3 months. Every day I'd wake up at 5:30 in the morning and I would wash and wax boats just to be in the same earshot as all those gold Olympians in Miami, Florida, where I didn't live. That's why I ended up living in my car for 3 months.
Right.
3 months washing and waxing like, the Karate
wax
Kid.
On, wax off, wax on, wax off.
And I ended up learning all the parts of the boat before I jumped in. And finally, somebody said after 3 months, come on.
Right.
Let's
That's amazing. You made a comment here with your skiing endeavors, right? And how many dumps you took in the trees and the OMGs, right? But you said, and this is key, I learned how to turn.
Yes.
Right? So if we can learn how to turn in life, and again, become aware, see where that wind is blowing, where that, so we can brace ourselves, learn to turn. I mean, Tracy, what you're sharing here in this show today is amazing. You guys out there, comment below. What the heck? Come on. Just give some feedback here, right? She's brilliant. So you can take all of these things, incorporate it into your life, whether it's personal, whether it's business, whether it's finance, whether it's health, it doesn't matter. Know when to brace yourself, where the darkness is, and know where your turns are so you don't hit those silly trees out there and crash and burn, right? Yeah. It's all about that. So what? So you fall on your face and you're rolling down the hill, right? So you're dumped out of the boat and it's like, okay, where's my boat? I
just went swimming.
That's right. That's right. So again, look at the message here that is so powerful. Find your your unstoppable you and
Yes.
show the world how unstoppable that you can really be.
And you find your unstoppable you by exceeding uncertainty, embracing possibility, and earning independence.
That is so powerful, so powerful. You know, those are powerful words, and they're very simple steps. Not easy, but they're simple. When you can write them down and remember them and follow them.
Yep.
And again, yeah, so put yourself out there where it has to be a challenge. Because if you're doing the same thing over and over with the same, you know, people that are like you, shall we say, you know, when you're a sheep, you're going to follow the herd.
Yep.
Right?
Be the black sheep.
That's right. Step out of.
Netflix is Brokeflix. Right?
I like
Netflix
that.
is Brokeflix. So I love my Netflix, but it's also my brokest times.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you want to have, you want to be rich with family, you want to be rich with relationships with your children, you want to be rich to pay your mortgage bill and your rent bill, you want to be rich in making a difference as a not-for-profit,
It starts with break out of the norm. Get out of that comfort zone. Get out of that comfort zone, right? Because that's predictable. You want to live in a world of unpredictability that keeps you driving forward, that keeps that action in motion, right? That gets you resourceful and unstoppable, right?
Nice.
Oh, Tracy, this has been such an honor having you here on the show and listening to your stories. And I know you got hundreds of thousands of them because of all the things that you've done. You know, we'll put a link into your bio, you know, up in the top thing here so people can go see all the fabulous things. We'll put your website up there. They can go check you out. But just look up Unstoppable Tracy, and she's all over social media. So when you think you're starting to feel a little sorry for yourself, you know, punch in something out there with Unstoppable Tracy and say, you know what? If she can do it, I can do it. Have your pity party. It's okay.
Yes.
But then pick yourself up and do it all over again. And that's about being that best you to be unstoppable.
Yeah. Disarm your limiting beliefs.
There you go. Disarm it. You heard what she said. Disarm it.
Yep.
Yes.
Disarm your limiting beliefs to be the best version of you. Beverly's tagline.
That is
Disarm your limiting beliefs to be the best version of yourself.
And that is so powerful. Thank you again, Tracy. We definitely have to have you back again.
Oh, thank you, Beverly. And it's true. It is Unstoppable Tracy, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. But I like to joke, Beverly, you know, there's no hands and there's no legs. And there's also no letter E in Tracy, Tracy. No extra parts with me. No extra body parts and no extra letters.
There, you got that. No extras, right? You just get everything that's there, not the extras. So she doesn't want French fries with that, right? She doesn't want a drink with it.
Oh, I'll have a drink with it.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about the drinks later on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Tracy. Thank you again so much for being here. How did you enjoy this? Let us know. Let us know how much you want to have her back so that we can get her back, right? So it's time to go.
And if you do go to the website, you'll find a video that's got 60 million viral views. It's my 3-minute story of breaking into kindergarten. 60 million viral views, and it's growing. That was last year. And there's another story about bullying, all on the videos of the website, and busting up the pilot strike at Air Canada and busting Uber into Canada.
She's a buster. She's not unstoppable. She's a buster.
Let's crush those obstacles, and we can thrive to the best version of ourselves.
That's right.
Thank you, Beverly.
Oh, you're so welcome. So let's go out there and be that best you that you can be. Tracy and I are going to be the best we that we can be, right? And we will see you all on the next show.